All right, hello everybody. Today we thought it would be cool to talk about something other than the Z9 for a little bit. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about what we look for in vintage glass. Landon kind of got me set looking for some vintage stuff, and then how well these adapt to film work and video work, and what kind of to look for when you're picking out a vintage set.
Before we go any further, we know there's a ton of vintage lenses out there. Today we're going to be talking about f-mount vintage glass. So these are two Nikon AIS lenses.
So Landon first got his 50mm one a while ago because he uses it on his film camera.
Over the summer, I got more into shooting film. I picked up this Nikon FM2N, and I've been using it ever since. The reason why we got into vintage lenses is because we kind of wanted more of a characteristical look, and since we use the Z bodies with mirrorless, they're very sharp. All the lenses, the Z-mount lenses, are very, very sharp. So we kind of wanted something with added a little bit more softness to the image.
We wanted more mistakes in our photos, basically.
Yeah, in our film,
in our
videos.
film specifically.
Yeah.
Because these are neat because they don't have the fancy coatings that the newer glass does. So you get some of the downsides of lenses like the chromatic aberrations, some soft roll off, sharpness around the edges is not always as great. And then lens flares too have kind of a different quality to them than they do on, say, our current S-line lenses.
And then also haze when you're pointing it directly into the sun.
Oh gosh,
These are all things that have been really corrected very well in the Z-mount lenses. And in these ones, you kind of get to see what it was like before all that.
Yeah, and sometimes for video, it's a cool look. Sometimes depends on what you want, obviously. We stuck with Nikon, the older Nikon AIS lenses, because we have the f-mount FTZ adapter, right? So the older Nikon lenses fit perfectly on either Landon's film camera or our newer Z cameras. Yeah. And it was kind of just nice to be able to keep everything Nikon so we know it fit tight. So that leads me to, I went looking on eBay I wanted an 85mm lens because I wanted a lens to get better close-up shots for when we're filming close-ups, during a dialogue scene or even just looking at a character, looking off into the distance, stuff like that. And 85mm was kind of the focal range that I was looking for because I really wanted something that would blur the background and kind of hide whatever background we're shooting in front of, because sometimes you can't always control the environment that you're shooting in. With the 85, it compresses it so much that it enlarges it so that your character really stands out in front of whatever the background is. Even if it's a super busy background, you still are able to focus on the character and not get distracted by what's going on in the background. So I really wanted an 85mm lens. So Landon convinced me, oh, look at the AIS lenses. They're great. And then he's right.
They are great.
They are great. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
I love this one.
So I did some digging and I found one on eBay, an eBay listing. The quality of the lens is in really great condition. There's no scratches on the paint or anything like that. There's no haze, no fungus growing in the lens, no scratches on the lens element either, or even on the back element, which is nice. The connection points are pretty clean. So when I got it though, the focus ring is very stiff. It wasn't exactly as described. It was noted that it was really smooth and easy to focus. So I was thinking, oh, okay, great. It'll be like Landon's little 50mm, really, really easy to do, really easy to go back and forth. Super consistent all the way through. But on mine, unfortunately, it sticks, it's a little slow, and it skips when you're trying to push the lens and go a little bit faster. So unfortunately for video, that is the opposite of ideal. It's really not great. Because it's very hard to follow somebody character. Even I tried to film our dogs again. and it just can't keep up. It's just too stiff. And then when it skips and it jumps and it gets quicker, it's just not even. So I reached out to a couple lens places here that fix vintage lenses, and unfortunately is gonna need to be completely taken apart, and then they have to do a CLA cleaning. But for these lenses, they have to take them all the way apart, they said, and they won't even touch it unless they can get parts for it, because they said if they open it up and then a guide rod is broken or something like that, they won't be able to do anything. So they have to make sure that they can get parts for it first. And they were able to get parts, but the cleaning is just gonna cost way too much for what I paid for the lens, unfortunately.
And it's difficult because this 85 has been discontinued by Nikon, but this 50mm 1.2 and the 35mm 1.4 are still in production. You just have to special order them, which is a longer process. But they also said it would be a 10-week turnaround for this.
Yikes. And we were hoping to use it pretty soon to test it with the Nikon Z lens, and I think just 10 weeks turnaround is going to be too much, and it's going to be a little bit too expensive. So yeah, we'll show you some of the tests with it. It looks really great, really awesome. The picture quality is very sharp. Characteristics are nice. The background blur is so beautiful. The bokeh, obviously nice because it's 85, but it was difficult to focus it. Really hard to keep up, and just not easy to go back and forth. Yeah, but I don't think I mentioned this is the 85mm AIS 1.4. Even at 1.4, it was still pretty sharp. I think we kept it around either 2 or 2.8 though, because we were shooting in bright sunlight too, and I had my ND filter on top of it to dial it in. But this is a great lens. I'm really torn, but I'm decided I'm gonna send it back, unfortunately.
And then talking about the test footage, another reason why we wanted to use more vintage lenses is because we've been looking at and trying out some of those diffusion filters. And with diffusion filters, it's always difficult because it just adds diffusion everywhere, and that's not something that we really want or kind of what we were going for. And so we wanted something that would kind of soften up a little bit more of the skin or a little bit more of the details, which these lenses do, and then also flare really well in light.
When you want it to.
Yeah. Even though these lenses do flare, you can still control them really easily. I think the flaring on this 85mm is actually
It's pretty.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And
it's pretty.
it's really easy to control.
Yeah.
And that's something that I wouldn't be able to get on my Z-mount 50mm 1.2. I think I'm a huge fan of using these vintage lenses, especially for film. And film photography and also film videography.
So the other trade-off, for video especially, but comparing the older AIS lenses to the newer ones use a focus by wire system for focusing, which isn't terrible. It sounds good, but for video specifically,
it's good for photography.
Yeah, it's great for photography. Awesome, great, perfect. But for videography, you can't really learn like muscle memory the focus ring of the lens because it's electronically controlled. So depending on how fast you do it or how slow you do it, it's always changing and there's no consistency. So if you try to repeat a move and you do it slightly different, like a little bit too fast or slower than you did before, you're gonna end up at a different focusing distance than you did before because it's a focus by wire. So that was another reason why I decided to try out the vintage lens, because it is just a manual focus ring and you can learn the lens and build it into your muscle memory and be able to just quickly be able to tell, like, okay, that's how far I'm trying to focus. I know that's about here, and then get in the ballpark. And then that's how like sports television videographers do it. They all manually focus to follow the ball and everything. So they have practice routines to learn the lens. And you can't really do that on the focus by wire because it's always different depending on how fast or how slow you do it. And it's just really hard to get a consistent focus that way and like learn your lens, which is a bummer because this focus is great. It's just really kind of muddy and mucky. And the focus breathing on these older vintage lenses is the other issue for videography. I knew that could be a problem, and I was hoping this one wouldn't be too bad. And it's not drastic. You really only notice it if it's on a tripod. If you're doing handheld, you probably won't notice it, but it does scale when you're focusing from something close to far away, it does scale your whole frame. And you don't want that for video because it's distracting to your audience if their whole field of view changes as you're changing focus, because then their attention gets drawn elsewhere instead of on the subject that you are focusing on to get them to pay attention to. So unfortunately, if I did fix that, I'd still have the focus breathing problem, so it's just not worth it for me, unfortunately. Yeah, but that's just because these are photo lenses, and focus breathing wasn't a consideration back then because they weren't meant for video.
Yeah. Unlike the Z lenses.
Yeah. Today, the Z lenses are pretty much designed and built with photo and video in mind. So I know on my 2470, I've tested that one. There's no focus breathing on that. It's really great to use for video.
Yeah. Same with the 50mm 1.2.
Yeah. So the rumor is that they're going to come out with the 85mm, supposedly maybe 1.2. We don't know, for a Z. That was my initial dilemma, going between the 85 vintage one AIS or waiting for the new S-line lens to come out. The only reason I decided to go with this one was because it was manual focus and not focused by wire like the new one's going to be. Because I wanted something, especially for close-ups, that I could learn the lens and have it in my muscle memory just to be able to like tell how far a face is and perfectly focus on that without having to worry about my camera changing my decisions for me and like adjusting electronically. So some of those tests that you just saw they're of this 85mm lens. We showed some of the focus breathing. It's noticeable on the tripod, not as much on the handheld stuff. The handheld clip in Julian looks really awesome. So.
But we'll probably keep an eye out on eBay or something for another 85 AIS to complete this setup. We have to find the right one.
It's hard to tell, yeah. Especially on eBay because you can't try it yourself. Yeah, we'll let you know what I decide to replace this with instead. Anyway, that has been Marc's vintage journey. quickly started and just as quickly ended.
I got him started on it though.
Yeah.
I am not going to stop because I know how good these lenses are and I just love them. So
yeah, I was afraid that was going to happen, but one day I'll find the right one.
Yeah, you had to try it. You just had to try it just to make sure.
It is a very nice lens. Yeah. If it weren't for that, I probably would have kept it. Even though the focus breathing could be an issue still, if I didn't have to fix the focus ring, I probably would have kept this lens. All right, I think that wraps it up for today. That was a little vintage glass
journey.
Yeah, expedition. So yeah, we'll talk to you next time. Hopefully we have a Z9 by then.
Yes, hopefully, and do all the YouTube things, like, subscribe, comment. Tell us if you've actually used vintage lenses before, or any Nikon vintage lenses, or if you have any recommendations on Cineglass that we can use with our Z mount bodies. We'd love to go check those out and try them out, especially now that we have the Z9 coming. We're going to be doing a lot more video.
More narrative video, yeah.
Yeah.
So yep, that's the plan. Here we go. And cut. All the detail on the hat. Oh man, it looks so good. You could even see like the dog hair on the hat that I didn't get all the way off, but yeah.